I am pleased to present the story of the great solar dynasty of Surya. This line of rulers traces its origins directly to the sun god himself. Their names are recorded in ancient sacred texts, and their deeds shaped the laws of the cosmos, while their mistakes led to disasters on a universal scale. We will follow the journey from the first man who survived a global flood, to kings who sacrificed their own kingdoms to uphold a single promise, becoming protectors of the gods themselves. We will learn how a ruler found himself working at the site of funeral pyres, and why a great warrior offered his body to a wild beast to save a sacred cow. This story is full of paradoxes, where duty conflicts with family ties, and the unwavering will of a man compels even the highest powers to yield. The sun god Surya and his wife Sanjna had a son named Manu Vaivasvata, also known as Shraddhadeva Manu. Before becoming the progenitor of a new humanity, Manu ruled the southern lands known in the texts as the Kingdom of Dravida. My name is Michael Reynolds. You're watching Ancient Secrets. Thanks for watching my content. I'd appreciate your subscription and like. Enjoy the video. At that time, a king's duties went beyond collecting taxes and defending borders. He was required to embody absolute honesty. Manu fulfilled this role impeccably. He never lied or broke promises, judged his subjects impartially regardless of their origins, earning the title Satyavrata, meaning devoted to truth. He established the first rules for farmers, created a tax system, and organized the protection of trade routes. After fulfilling his duty to society and raising sons, he passed the throne to his heirs and left the palace. Manu retreated to the Malaya Mountains to undertake a long ascetic practice. His days were filled with strict rituals, chanting Vedic hymns, and hours of meditation. His diet, typical for ascetics, was limited to wild roots and water. His body grew thin, but his mind attained exceptional clarity. Ancient texts describe a day that changed history. At dawn, Manu entered the waters of the Kritamala River to perform Tarpana, the morning ritual of offering water to ancestors. He scooped the icy water with his hands, facing the rising sun. At that moment, a tiny fish appeared in his hands. "O great king, protect me from the larger predators in this river," the fish spoke in a human voice. "If you save my life now, I will save you from an impending disaster that will destroy all living things." Manu accepted this duty, recognizing his responsibility to protect the weak. He placed the fish in a clay pot filled with drinking water. Overnight, the fish grew so large that the pot became too small. In the morning, Manu transferred it to a stone well. Soon the creature filled the entire well. The former king then moved it to a lake, and when the lake became too small, he released it into the course of the Ganges River. Eventually, the current carried the enormous fish into the open ocean. When it reached the size of a whale, the creature revealed its true nature. The fish was actually Matsya, the first avatar of the god Vishnu. Matsya warned Manu of an approaching flood. She explained that the current age was ending, and soon the ocean would engulf the continents, washing away all traces of civilization. Following the divine instructions, Manu began building a ship. He cut trees, joined planks, and sealed the seams with resin. When the work was complete, he gathered seeds of all known plants on board to preserve the foundation of life for the next era. Ancient texts mention that along with Manu, the 7 sages, known as the Saptarishis, boarded the ship, carrying the wisdom of the Vedas. When the flood began, the sky darkened, and rain joined the ocean as it overflowed its banks. The earth disappeared beneath the waters. Matsya appeared again, now with a horn on her head. Manu tied his ship to this horn with a rope. Matsya guided the vessel through the waves in darkness for many years. Eventually, the ship came to rest on the peak of a mountain in the northern Himalayas. When the waters receded, Manu descended to the land entirely alone. The old world had ceased to exist. The story of the Great Flood has been the subject of much study. This theme appears in Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, as well as in Zoroastrianism and the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh. However, the emphasis in Hindu texts is notably different. In the biblical tradition, the flood is a tool of punishment, and salvation is granted for righteousness. In the Indian version, Manu is saved by fulfilling his duty as a protector, helping a vulnerable creature who asked for aid. Indian cosmology is based on the concept of cyclical time. Ages, or yugas, follow one another, ending in periods of destruction called pralaya. In this system, Manu is not merely a survivor, but the guardian of the universe's foundations. He carries the material and spiritual knowledge from the previous cycle into the new world, ensuring the continuity of Dharma. This raises an intriguing question. How deeply is the fear of uncontrollable water embedded in human memory, given that this story appears with striking similarity in diverse theological systems across continents? Alone on the mountain peak after the waters receded, Manu faced a daunting emptiness. The land was cleansed but lifeless. His first priority was to continue the human race. To do this, he performed a yajna, a fire ritual. Ancient texts describe this process with precise detail. Manu built an altar from purified bricks, kindled a fire, and regularly offered sacrifices. The offerings included clarified butter, sour milk, and curds. These were cast into the water, symbolizing the fertilization of the element. After a year, a being formed from the sacrificial substances emerged from the water, stepping on butter, and named herself Ila, daughter of Manu. Later texts offer a different version. According to the Puranic tradition, Manu had a wife named Shraddha. The royal couple sought their spiritual teacher's help to perform a ritual for the birth of a male heir. Priests began chanting mantras to the gods Mitra and Varuna. Vedic rituals require strict precision. During the lengthy ceremony, the priest responsible for pouring offerings into the fire made a mistake in pronunciation or lost concentration. Because of this disruption in the sound vibration, a girl was born. Manu was displeased with the outcome. Understanding the cause, the teacher appealed directly to the supreme deity. The gods responded to the ascetic's plea and changed the child's gender. The girl became a boy named Sudyumna. He grew up learning to wield weapons, studying governance, and preparing to inherit the throne. One day, the prince went hunting with his retinue. Pursuing game, he approached the foothills and entered a sacred forest, the abode of the god Shiva and his wife Parvati. Shortly before the prince's arrival, an incident occurred. A group of wandering sages unexpectedly entered the grove while the divine couple was in seclusion. Parvati felt discomfort at the presence of strangers. To appease his wife and ensure her privacy in the future, Shiva cast a spell over the forest. Any man crossing its boundary would instantly transform into a woman. Sudyumna was unaware of this rule. The moment his horse's hooves touched the ground, the transformation took place. His physical form changed, his armor fell away, and his loyal horse became a mare. This version of the story differs slightly, emphasizing the prince's realization of the irreversible nature of his transformation. This story is somewhat different. Realizing the irreversibility of his transformation, the former heir to the throne, now known as Ila, set out toward the abode of Shiva in search of salvation. Approaching the divine couple, Ila pleaded with the Lord of Ascetics. "O destroyer of illusions, restore my former form. The kingdom awaits its ruler, yet I have lost my nature through ignorance of the boundaries of your forest. Relieve me of this burden. Allow me to fulfill my duty to my father." Shiva listened, but the laws of the universe do not permit the reversal of a divine decree, even by the one who spoke it. Moved by compassion for the trapped soul, Parvati offered a compromise. Shiva declared, "My word is unbreakable, and the forest will retain its power. But we shall divide your nature. 1 month you will be a man, capable of bearing arms and ruling the state. The next month, you will live as a woman, fully forgetting your former male duties and past life." This cyclical agreement took effect, and life at court followed this new rhythm. During her month as a woman, Ila left the palace and wandered the surrounding forests. One day, she met Buddha, the god of the planet Mercury and the son of Chandra, the moon god. Buddha caught Ila's attention, and a bond formed between them. From this union, a boy named Pururavas was born. He would become the founder of the lunar dynasty, Chandravamsha. This tale serves as a vivid example of how ancient texts organized the political geography of the Indian subcontinent. All ruling houses trace their lineage to two branches, the solar and the lunar. Folklore scholars interpret this as an attempt to explain the duality of human nature and the structure of society. The solar dynasty, descended directly from Manu, embodies the masculine principle. It represents strict law, an unyielding system of rules, clear light, and absolute clarity. The lunar dynasty, arising from Ila's transformation and connection to the moon god, symbolizes the feminine principle. The moon changes phases regularly, is associated with emotions, tides, and intuition. Within one person coexist both concepts, the order of the sun and the fluidity of the moon. The myth of Ila's alternating genders captures the idea that state power rests on balancing these forces. The firmness of the commander is always balanced by the flexibility of the diplomat, and strict adherence to law requires the ability to adapt to changing times. This balance of change and order demanded physical embodiment on Earth. Shraddhadevan Manu had sons who inherited the solar, unyielding nature of their grandfather Surya. The Puranas list 10 sons, but the eldest and most powerful was Ikshvaku. He effectively became the first earthly ruler of the new era. Manu granted him vast lands in the valley of the Sarayu River. There, Ikshvaku founded a city that would become the symbol of the solar dynasty, the Great Ayodhya. The Ramayana epic offers a detailed description of this capital. Ancient authors painted the image of the ideal metropolis of their time. Ayodhya was built with strict geometry, following early principles of architectural science known as Vastu Shastra. Wide, straight streets crossed the city, regularly sprinkled with water to settle dust and cool the air during hot months. Along the main roads, shady trees formed green corridors. Residential quarters were arranged symmetrically, creating a precise grid. At the city's centre stood the royal palace, surrounded by gardens and parks where peacocks and tame deer roamed freely. Stone fortress walls encircled the settlement, with watchtowers and platforms for archers. Defensive systems included deep moats filled with water. Texts mention that these moats housed crocodiles and venomous snakes, making crossing them a perilous challenge for any enemy. Access was granted through massive gates equipped with complex lifting mechanisms and iron bolts. Marketplaces buzzed with trade, as merchants brought fabrics, spices, and precious stones from distant regions. The city's name translates as quote 2 or quote 3. Academics agree that Ayodhya's description reflects humanity's historical shift from a nomadic lifestyle to settled urban development. The emergence of permanent settlements with developed infrastructure required a new approach to governance. People could no longer simply move away when conflicts arose or pastures were depleted. Living closely together in limited space inevitably led to disputes over land, fresh water sources, and resources. Ikshvaku faced the challenge of structuring this society. He took on the heavy responsibility of becoming the first lawgiver and established a code known as the Royal Dharma. The ruler divided the population into classes, defining duties and rights for each group. The Varna system was formed. Brahmins performed rituals, studied texts, and served as royal advisors. Kshatriyas, including Ikshvaku himself, trained in weaponry and defended the state's borders. Vaishyas engaged in agriculture, animal husbandry, and trade, while Shudras carried out crafts and service work. This structure reinforced the division of labour and increased the city's economic efficiency. To support the state apparatus, Ikshvaku introduced a system of regular taxes. According to treatises, the standard rate was 1/10 of the harvest or income. A portion of grain, textiles, and produced goods was delivered to the royal treasury. These reserves were stored in secure granaries to prepare for droughts, floods, or prolonged military sieges. In return, the king guaranteed physical safety, protection from external enemies, and fair judgment in internal disputes. The agreement between ruler and people gained clear legal form. Judicial proceedings under Ikshvaku were public. The king heard both sides, relying on witness testimony and advice from legal experts. Punishments ranged from fines to exile. Prisons, as commonly understood, did not exist, so justice was swift and pragmatic. To maintain authority, Ikshvaku formed a professional army. The forces were divided into chariot units, cavalry, infantry, and a corps of war elephants. Elephants served as the heavy equipment of the time, breaking enemy lines and destroying wooden fortifications. Evenings in Ayodhya were lively. Streets were lit by oil lamps mounted on stone pillars. Hearths burned in homes, and rituals began in temples. The sound of drums echoed over rooftops. Citizens gathered in squares to discuss news and make oral agreements for the following day. Establishing such order always required limiting personal freedom. Before strict laws, people lived by the right of the strong, or tribal customs. Ikshvaku monopolized the right to use force, taking it from individuals and placing it in state hands. Subjects sacrificed some independence for collective stability. Trade began to be regulated by standardized measures of weight and length, preventing deception in markets. Rules for contracts and inheritance were established. Ancient texts show that the concept of the ideal city rests on unchanging principles. Security, predictable laws, and reliable infrastructure were paramount, both in ancient India and modern urban theory. Ikshvaku laid the tradition that law stands above the ruler's personal ties. Dharma required the king to care for his subjects, but also to punish offenders without hesitation, regardless of their social status or kinship. Thus, the Solar dynasty found its foundation. From that point on, the ruler no longer belonged to himself. His personal interests were entirely subordinated to the task of preserving the functioning of the state. Ikshvaku, the founder of Ayodhya, had 100 sons. The ancient texts tell that the ruler divided his territories into numerous provinces. 50 of his sons were appointed governors of the northern lands. 48 were sent to govern the southern regions, establishing new settlements and roads there. 2 remained at their father's court in the capital. The eldest son and primary heir to the throne was Vikukshi. From an early age, he studied military strategy, administration, and sacred scriptures under the guidance of Brahmins. Preparing the heir took many years, and Vikukshi was considered a worthy successor, capable of holding the empire together. As the season approached for the Ashtakashratri, a vital Vedic ritual honouring ancestors, preparations began. According to the texts, the well-being of the living depends directly on the satisfaction of the departed generations. Ancestors residing in the spirit world required regular offerings. At that time, the tradition demanded fresh meat from wild animals, obtained under strict rules, to perform the ceremony. Ikshvaku summoned his eldest son and tasked him with going into the forest. Vikukshi donned his armour, took up his bow, mounted his war chariot, and left the protective moats of Ayodhya. The hunt lasted the entire daylight hours. The prince pursued deer and boars deep into the forest. Skilled with weapons, he successfully secured the required game for the sacrifice. However, by evening, Vikukshi felt physically exhausted and hungry. The journey back to the capital was long, and his strength was nearly spent. The prince decided to light a fire. He prepared one of the captured rabbits, roasting it over the flames, and ate the meat before returning to the palace. The rest of the game he carefully gathered onto his chariot to bring to his father. The following morning, preparations for the ritual began in the palace. The priests kindled the sacred fire, and servants brought the meat to the altar for consecration. The chief spiritual advisor of the Solar dynasty, the sage Vashishtha, began inspecting the offerings. In Indian tradition, the concept of ritual purity was paramount. There was the notion of uchishta, food contaminated by saliva or touched by someone who had already begun eating. Food intended for gods and ancestors could not be tasted by humans. Any contact with the food for personal hunger rendered it unsuitable for the altar. Vashishtha, with his profound knowledge, immediately recognized a breach in protocol. He halted the ceremony and turned to the ruler, saying, "O king, this meat cannot be offered to the ancestors. Your son has defiled it. He gave in to physical hunger and ate the rabbit before the ritual began. The ceremony is broken." Ikshvaku listened silently to the sage's words. A conflict of interests arose before him. Should he overlook his eldest son's mistake, excusing it as fatigue after the long hunt? Or should he act according to the strict letter of the law? For the ruler of the Solar dynasty, there was no choice. Ikshvaku summoned Vikukshi. Upon hearing the truth from his son's own mouth, the king pronounced the sentence without hesitation. You placed your physical need above your duty to the ancestors. One who cannot control his appetite cannot govern the state. Leave Ayodhya. You are no longer heir to the throne. Vikukshi removed his royal ornaments, left behind his ancestral weapons, and walked into exile. Among the people and in the ancient texts, he became known as Shashada, meaning the rabbit eater. For many years, the former prince wandered the forests, living as a hermit. He survived on wild roots, slept on the ground, and practiced strict austerities to atone for his transgression. Only after Ikshvaku's passing did Shashada return to the capital. The council of priests recognized his purification as sufficient, and he ascended the throne, proving his right to rule through endurance and repentance. Historians still debate how to interpret such uncompromising ancient laws. Exiling one's own son for eating a single rabbit seems, to modern sensibilities, a harsh punishment. Yet this episode reveals the mechanics of power in the Vedic era. A ruler's personal needs could never supersede public and religious protocol. The Shraddha ritual ensured the prosperity of the entire state, and consequently, the stability of the ruling dynasty. Violating the ceremony endangered the safety of Ayodhya's inhabitants by depriving them of ancestral protection. Ikshvaku demonstrated to his subjects that before Dharma, all are equal. The king had no right to leniency for his family. Forgiving his son's weakness would have cost him the moral authority to judge farmers or craftsmen for their misdeeds. The story of Shashada is direct evidence that heir status does not grant privilege. On the contrary, high rank imposes double responsibility. A hunter's mistake might go unnoticed, but a future king's error threatens the order of the world. The strict laws of the Solar dynasty ensured state stability, but sometimes brought the ruling line to the brink of extinction. Later, King Yuvanasva ascended the throne of Ayodhya. The ancient texts describe him as a righteous monarch who generously gifted the priests with cattle and gold. His treasury was full, the granaries overflowed with grain, and the borders were securely guarded by commanders. Yet the halls of the royal palace remained quiet. The king had no heir. In Vedic culture, the absence of a son meant a break in the line of ancestral offerings. Without regular rituals, the departed generations lost peace in the afterlife, and the dynasty lost divine protection. Aware of the threat, Yuvanasva entrusted governance to the council of ministers and left Ayodhya. Accompanied by his retinue, he journeyed to the forest where the hermitage of the sage Bhrigu was located. The king requested the priests to perform the Putrakameshti, a multi-day sacrificial ritual to obtain offspring. The Brahmins erected a ritual pavilion aligned with the cardinal directions. For days they poured purified, heated oil into the sacred fire, invoking the god Agni as an intermediary between mortals and devas. The air filled with smoke and the continuous chanting of hymns. At the ritual's climax, the priest filled a copper vessel with spring water and recited mantras over it. This water absorbed the power of the spoken syllables and the energy of the fire. According to the Brahmin's design, at dawn, the king's chief queen was to drink the consecrated water, after which the future ruler would be conceived within her womb. The vessel was left on the altar inside the pavilion, and the weary priests retired to rest. In the middle of the night, Yuvanasva awoke thirsty. Wandering through the sleeping camp in search of water, he did not wish to disturb the servants. Entering the dark pavilion, he felt for the vessel on the altar and drank its entire contents. The next morning, the priests discovered the empty vessel. Upon learning what had occurred, Bhrigu declared, "The mantra cannot be undone. The ritual's energy has found its vessel, and now new life will grow within the king himself." The ancient texts describe this period as one of physical trials for the monarch. When the time came for the child's birth, divine physicians known as the Ashvins descended from the heavens. They performed a surgical procedure, opening the king's left side. A robust infant was born. Yuvanasva survived the operation, but before the assembled devas, a practical problem arose. The newborn had no mother to nurse him. The gods gathered in a circle, speaking among themselves. "Who will feed this child?" they asked, looking at the boy. Then Indra, Lord of the heavens, stepped forward. He leaned over the altar, placed his index finger in the infant's mouth and said, "Manhata, he shall drink from me." The words of the thunderer became the child's name. Manhata did not drink maternal milk, but was nourished by the divine energy flowing from the finger of the king of gods. Thanks to this sustenance, he grew to the size of a full-grown warrior in a single day. The young man masters all kinds of weapons, studies the sacred texts, and learns the art of governance. Manhata becomes the first Chakravartin, a title meaning one whose wheels roll everywhere. The chariot of such a ruler faces no obstacles on land, in the sky, or beneath the ocean. Manhata gathers an army and unites lands from sunrise to sunset under his rule. The epic mentions that this king subjugated not only human kingdoms, but also territories inhabited by serpent beings, nature spirits, and celestial musicians. He establishes a unified tax system, builds roads, and constructs hundreds of temples. The myth of Manhata's birth defies biological laws. In epic literature, the extraordinary nature of heroes is often emphasized through unnatural births. Heroes emerge from sacrificial fire, ploughed earth, or even from a man's body. This sets them apart from ordinary people and legitimizes their right to absolute power. Some scholars believe the story of Indra's finger carries a political message shaped by the priestly class. A ruler nourished by the king of gods receives direct divine sanction to govern the world. His authority no longer depends solely on earthly laws, heritage, or strength. He literally absorbs Indra's life force. Consequently, any rebellion against Manhata is equated with insurrection against the celestial order itself. Moreover, this narrative illustrates the concept of royal sacrifice. Even a Shiva carries the sun, assuming the feminine role and the associated pain. She becomes both father and mother to the future emperor. The birth from the left side also holds symbolic meaning. In Indian medical tradition, the left side of the human body is linked to the lunar feminine principle. Thus, ancient authors maintain a philosophical balance of energies, even while describing events impossible from a physiological standpoint. The dynasty gains a great conqueror, and the story of the solar lineage takes another turn. Several generations after the era of great conquests, King Satyavata ascends to the throne of Ayodhya. Later, he becomes known as Trishanku. Translations from Sanskrit sources reveal that this name means one who committed 3 sins. Before gaining power, Satyavata incurred his father's wrath and was banished from the palace. During long wanderings amid a drought, he did the unthinkable. He took a cow belonging to the sage Vashishtha. Satyavata slaughtered the animal to feed the hungry family of another sage, Vishvamitra, who was then far away performing austerities. For these deeds, the prince earned his nickname and spent many years atoning for his mistakes among outcasts, before circumstances allowed him to claim the rightful throne. Having become ruler and reached old age, Trishanku decides to attempt the impossible. He wishes to ascend bodily to the heavenly abodes of the gods without leaving his physical form behind. For the Vedic philosophical system, this is a direct violation of fundamental natural laws. Indian tradition clearly distinguishes the gross physical body, made of bones, flesh and blood, from the subtle body, composed of mind, intellect and life energy. The physical form is meant solely for earthly existence and is subject to decay. Transition to higher realms requires the abandonment of the gross body. Trishanku turns to the ancestral mentor of the solar dynasty, the chief priest Vashishtha, and requests a grand sacrifice to achieve bodily ascension. Vashishtha refuses categorically, explaining that such a desire breaks the established cosmic order. After the refusal, Trishanku stubbornly approaches Vashishtha's sons, hoping they will perform the ritual in secret, but they are outraged by his audacity and curse him, condemning him to lose his noble appearance. Then the king of Ayodhya seeks out Vishvamitra. This choice is logical. Vishvamitra was once a warrior king, a kshatriya, but through sheer willpower became a great sage. He had long been in open rivalry with Vashishtha. Vishvamitra listens to Trishanku's plea and agrees to help. He is motivated by 2 factors. remembering how Trishanku saved his family from starvation years ago, and the opportunity to prove his superiority over the chief priest by accomplishing what Vashistha deemed impossible. Vishvamitra gathers priests from across India and begins the complex ritual. Vedic texts describe this process in detail. Priests build altars in strict geometric shapes from baked bricks. Clarified butter is poured continuously into the sacrificial fire. Rhythmic hymns sound, their vibrations intended to alter the density of space. The sage draws on energy accumulated over a decade of austerities. His concentration is so powerful that Trishanku's physical body lifts from the ground. Clad in his robes, the king slowly ascends through dense atmospheric layers toward the heavenly realms. When Trishanku reaches the gates of heaven, the gods notice him. Indra, lord of the skies, refuses to admit a human in a physical body into his domain. Indra blocks the path and pronounces judgment. "Your actions defile the heavens. There is no place for you among the gods in this form. Fall back, foolish one. Return to earth." Indra uses his power to cast Trishanku down. The king plummets headfirst toward the earth, crying out for help. Vishvamitra, standing by the sacrificial altar, hears the falling king's cry. He looks to the sky and commands with authority, "Stop!" The fall immediately ceases. Trishanku hangs suspended in the cosmic void between earth and the realm of gods. Vishvamitra's anger turns toward Indra. Since the Lord of the Heavens refuses to allow his ward into the existing paradise, the sage decides to create a new one. Vishvamitra begins forming a parallel universe. Before the astonished gods, he constructs new constellations in the southern hemisphere, ignites new stars, and openly declares his intention to create new celestial rulers who will forever replace Indra and his retinue. The gods, witnessing the real disruption of the cosmic structure, concede. They approach Vishvamitra with an offer. Trishanku will remain exactly where the sage stopped him. The new stars created by Vishvamitra will surround him, forming a personal celestial sphere. As a result, Trishanku remains hanging upside down in the southern sky. This story serves as a vivid metaphor for boundless human ambition. The desire to retain the physical body during transition to other states stems from a natural fear of transformation and the end of earthly existence. The ruler clings to familiar form, refusing to accept the universal law of matter's decay. On the other hand, this tale explores the theme of a wounded ego. Vishvamitra is willing to disrupt the balance of the universe and reshape the starry map solely to win a dispute with his rival. Ancient Indian astronomers immortalized this myth in the names of celestial bodies. The constellation known in Western tradition as the Southern Cross still bears the name Trishanku in Indian astronomy. Its bright stars form the figure of the ruler hanging upside down, constantly reminding us of the consequences of trying to impose human will on cosmic laws. Trishanku left a rightful heir. The throne of Ayodhya passed to his son, King Harishchandra. His story is remarkable and well known. Harishchandra ruled a vast kingdom, collected taxes, and expanded borders. However, for many years he had no heir. For a ruler of the Solar dynasty, the absence of a son meant the interruption of the line of succession. According to tradition, it was the son who was responsible for performing regular funeral rites. Without these offerings, the king's ancestors would be deprived of peace. Faced with this, Harishchandra decides to seek help from higher powers. He chooses Varuna, the ancient god of the cosmic waters and the strict guardian of the cosmic order known as Rita. Varuna was known for overseeing the fulfillment of oaths and punishing those who broke their promises. As recounted in ancient Vedic texts, particularly the Aitareya Brahmana, the king makes a direct pact with the deity. Harishchandra asks Varuna to grant him a son. In return, he promises to offer the child as a sacrifice to Varuna immediately after birth. The god accepts these terms, and soon the queen gives birth to a boy named Rahita. Varuna then appears at the palace, demanding that the vow be fulfilled. Harishchandra finds himself torn between his duty as ruler and his feelings as a father. He begins searching for loopholes in the ritual's requirements. He appeals to the god, explaining that a sacrificial animal is considered pure only 10 days after birth, and asks for this period to pass. Varuna agrees. After 10 days, Varuna returns, but Harishchandra offers a new argument. The infant has not yet grown teeth, so the sacrifice would be incomplete. Varuna leaves again. This delay happens several times as the king waits for the baby's teeth to emerge, then for the permanent teeth to come in. Finally, Harishchandra insists that the prince must grow up, undergo his initiation ceremony, and receive his warrior's weapons before becoming a worthy offering to the great god. Varuna patiently waits for the boy to mature. Rahita receives his armor and learns of his father's vow. Refusing to become a sacrifice, the prince takes up a bow, leaves Ayodhya, and hides in the dense forests. When Varuna discovers Rahita's escape, he realizes that the king has deliberately broken his oath. The god's wrath falls upon Harishchandra, striking him with a severe illness known in the texts as Jaladhara. The king's body begins to swell with water, his abdomen distended by a severe edema. In Vedic medicine, this condition was seen as a direct punishment from Varuna for breaking the promise. Harishchandra loses the ability to govern his kingdom. Meanwhile, Rahita wanders the forests. He tries several times to return home, but the god Indra blocks his path each time, urging him to continue his journey. In the 6th year of exile, the prince encounters a starving Brahmin named Ajigata, accompanied by his wife and 3 sons. The family is on the brink of death due to famine during a drought. Rahita offers a deal. He will give 100 cows in exchange for one of the Brahmin's sons. At that time, cows were the main measure of wealth and served as universal currency. The boy purchased would take the prince's place on Varuna's sacrificial altar. Ajigata refuses to sell his eldest son, and the mother forbids giving up the youngest. The choice falls on the middle son, Shunashepa. Rahita hands over the herd of cows, takes Shunashepa, and heads back to Ayodhya. The prince gives the boy to his father to complete the ritual and lift the king's illness. This episode from the Aitareya Brahmana raises a complex question about the value of one's word. Harishchandra attempts to deceive the god by bargaining for his son's life and using formal rules to delay the sacrifice. The laws of the universe respond to this deception with the destruction of the king's physical body. Particularly noteworthy is the practice of substitution in sacrifice. The texts describe a situation where one person's life is bought with material wealth to save another. It is striking how the ruler's fear of losing his only heir and facing his own demise leads him to purchase another child's life. The Brahmin sells his son out of extreme hunger, while the king buys the boy's life to preserve his dynasty. This story confronts the listener with a moral dilemma. Does a king, endowed with power, have the right to save his family at the expense of his subjects' lives? Harishchandra shifts the burden of his duty onto the shoulders of a poor boy. The justification of state necessity clashes with the ruler's personal responsibility for every word spoken. The climax unfolds at the wooden sacrificial post. The boy, Shunashepa, tightly bound with 3 ropes made from the munja grass, realizes the hopelessness of his situation. The priests prepare the ritual fires. At this moment, the boy begins to recite hymns aloud, addressing the ancient gods. The Rig Veda texts describe the strict order of his appeals. First, he calls upon Prajapati, the progenitor of all living beings, then Agni, the god of fire, and finally Indra, the lord of the heavens. The higher powers accept his sincere prayers. The invisible bonds fall from the boy's body on their own. Varuna, the god of waters, is pleased with this peaceful resolution. He accepts the offering of pure devotion and lifts the illness from the king. Harishchandra is fully healed, and balance is temporarily restored. There is also another Puranic story about King Harishchandra, his wife and child, that logically fits somewhere at the beginning of the tale about the word given to Varuna. Some consider these to be 2 unrelated accounts. Later, the sage Vishvamitra decides to test the limits of Harishchandra's righteousness. In Indian epics, this sage often acts as a catalyst for the hero's trials. The occasion arises during a royal hunt. Harishchandra rides a war chariot into the forest, chasing a wild boar. The beast skillfully weaves through the trees, leading the king far from his retinue, elephants and beaters. Soon the boar disappears without a trace into the thickets. The tired king emerges into a forest clearing, where he meets a solitary ascetic. This is Vishvamitra, who has taken on a disguised form. The ascetic complains about life in the forest, constant hunger, and asks the king for help. Harishchandra, strictly following the Kshatriya duty to protect the weak and support Brahmins, makes an unguarded promise to fulfill any request the sage might have. At that moment, Vishvamitra reveals his true form. He demands that the king surrender his entire kingdom, including the treasury, army, farmlands, and control over the capital, Ayodhya. Harishchandra does not retract his words. He scoops water from a copper vessel, utters a renunciation formula, and pours the water onto the sage's palm. This ancient gesture, called Sankalpa, legally and spiritually seals the irrevocability of the gift. The transition from absolute power to complete poverty happens in a single day. The king gives up the empire his ancestors ruled for centuries without uttering a sound of regret. But Vishvamitra is not satisfied. Vedic tradition requires that any religious act or gift transfer be accompanied by dakshina, a fee paid to the priest for performing the ritual. The sage demands gold coins as payment. Harishchandra replies that all the empire's gold now belongs by law to the new ruler, and he has no right to take what belongs to another. Vishvamitra remains firm. He warns the former king that if he does not pay the dakshina, his gift will lose its legal power and his vow will become false. He gives Harishchandra a deadline of exactly 1 lunar month to collect the gold before the next new moon. Otherwise, the sage's curse will destroy his lineage completely. Harishchandra accepts these terms. He is forbidden to remain on the lands he has just given away. With his wife and young son Rahita, he leaves Ayodhya forever. They remove their gold jewellery, leave behind their silk clothes, put on cloaks made of tree bark, and set out on foot. According to the laws of renunciation, exiles are not allowed to carry food, weapons, or means of transport. They must survive on whatever they find along the way. The city's inhabitants come out into the streets. Ancient texts describe how the people weep, throw themselves at the former king's feet, and beg him to stay. They offer to pool their personal savings to pay off the debt to the sage, but Harishchandra refuses. He does not look back at the crowd's cries, not wanting to show weakness. His wife's feet, accustomed to palace carpets, are worn to bleeding by the rough stones on the very first day of their journey. This story reveals the concept of truth, or satya, in Indian philosophy. For Harishchandra, the loss of social status, wealth, and comfort is insignificant compared to the prospect of breaking his word. A vow forms the foundation of the world's order. If the king breaks his promise, the law of Dharma will collapse, leading inevitably to social and cosmic chaos. From the perspective of modern Indology, this myth reflects a crucial social shift in ancient society. The power of the secular monarch is strictly limited by spiritual law. A priest, armed only with his word and asceticism, proves stronger than a ruler with his army and riches. The conflict between the Brahmins and Kshatriyas for supremacy in society finds its mythological resolution here in favour of the spiritual caste. How many people today would willingly sacrifice comfort to preserve honour? Harishchandra makes this choice consciously. Vishvamitra is not portrayed as a villain seeking to destroy a man for personal pleasure. Instead, he fulfills the strict role of a tester of karma. The sage creates conditions where social protections fall away, leaving only the true essence of the person. Harishchandra's family sets out eastward. Their long journey takes them beyond former realms to the sacred city of Kashi, known today as Varanasi. According to the texts, this city rests on the tip of the trident of the god Shiva and belongs to no earthly king. The city is divided by the Ganges River into several parts, where ancient ghats, stone steps leading into the water, have hosted cremation rituals for centuries. It is here that Harishchandra hopes to find hard physical labour to earn gold to repay his debt. Time relentlessly slips away. The former ruler of the inhabited world becomes an ordinary wanderer, burdened by debt and responsible for the lives of his wife and young child. Ancient Puranic texts, especially the Markandeya Purana, describe the king's subsequent actions in detail. Facing a desperate situation, he decides to sell the most precious thing he has left, his family, at the slave market. Harishchandra's wife, Shaivya, and their young son, Rohita, enter the service of a wealthy Brahmin. The transaction is conducted strictly and matter-of-factly. The Brahmin counts the coins, and the former queen, accustomed to silks and the service of hundreds of attendants, begins performing hard domestic work in a stranger's house. The gold earned is not enough to fully repay the debt owed to Vishvamitra. Then Harishchandra puts himself up for sale. He is bought by the caretaker of the cremation grounds, a member of the Chandala caste. In ancient Indian society, the Chandalas were outside the social hierarchy. They were forbidden to live within city walls, wear clean clothes, or own property, except for dogs and donkeys. From this moment, the former ruler of Ayodhya loses his name. He becomes a nameless worker of the cremation grounds. Work at the Varanasi Ghats follows a strict routine. Harishchandra's owner holds a monopoly on the sacred fire. No funeral pyre can be lit without flames brought from his hearth. Harishchandra must maintain the eternal flame, chop wood, keep order on the riverbank, and most importantly, collect fees from relatives for the right to perform the ritual. He wears tattered clothes taken from the deceased. His skin is covered with a layer of grey ash, and his hair is tangled in knots. Day after day, he watches the fire equalize rich merchants, mighty warriors, and poor peasants. The place of the funeral pyres serves as a metaphor for the complete erasure of social status. Here, the illusions of the material world vanish. The boundaries between castes fade, leaving only the fire that transforms the physical body into another state. Harishchandra sleeps on bare earth under the open sky, survives on meagre food scraps, and faithfully hands over every coin collected to his master without withholding a single penny. Months pass in exhausting labour. One dark night, during a heavy rainstorm, a lone woman arrives at the cremation grounds. In her arms rests the body of a child wrapped in worn cloth. The boy had been bitten by a venomous snake while gathering firewood in the forest on behalf of his Brahmin master. In the glow of the dying embers, Harishchandra recognizes his wife and son. The woman also recognizes her husband, now a soot-covered worker of the cremation grounds. She falls onto the wet stones and pleads for permission to cremate their son. She has no money to pay for the wood and the caretaker's fee. Harishchandra is torn by inner grief, but his mind remains bound by law. He speaks to his wife. He is bound by a vow to his master. His duty is to collect payment for every body laid upon the pyre. If he allows their son to pass without payment, he would become a thief and break his promise. Unable to pay for the ritual, she offers her only possession, the other half of an old sari she is wearing. Harishchandra refuses to accept his wife's last garment as payment. Realizing the hopelessness of their situation, the parents decide together to step into the funeral pyre and share their child's fate. They pile the wood, perform their final ablutions in the waters of the Ganges, and prepare to enter the fire. At that moment, the space of the cremation grounds is filled with a brilliant light that dispels the night's darkness. Before the pyre appear the highest gods, led by the Lord of Justice, Dharma, and the sage Vishvamitra. The trial is over. Vishvamitra declares that Harishchandra has proven his absolute commitment to truth. The gods restore Rohita to life. The sage returns the king's crown, treasury, and power, acknowledging that this man's will surpasses even the might of celestial beings. There is an intriguing theory about Vishvamitra's role. In this story, within Indian tradition, he is not a cruel villain, but an examiner. His task is to burn away the last remnants of selfishness and attachment in the ruler's consciousness. By forcing the king to demand payment from his own wife for their son's cremation, the sage pushes the concept of duty to its absolute extreme. This story has shaped the ethical framework of Indian society for centuries. It demonstrates that loyalty to one's duty and word is worth more than personal tragedy. A ruler who can forsake his family to preserve the law earns the right to govern the entire world. Harishchandra returns to the throne transformed. He is no longer the man who left the palace. He has come to understand the nature of power and the weight of human suffering, becoming the perfect representative of divine order on earth. Harishchandra's restoration to the throne established the standards of earthly authority. However, the influence of the Solar dynasty extended far beyond the walls of Ayodhya. Several generations later, in the line of Ikshvaku's descendants, a ruler named Puranjaya is born. His reign coincides with a serious cosmic crisis threatening the balance of the world. According to ancient Indian epics, the war between the gods and their adversaries, the Asuras, was prolonged. The balance of power shifted repeatedly. The Asuras excelled in warfare, and, during this period, the gods suffered severe defeats. The Asuras breached the defences of the heavenly realms, destroyed altars, and displaced the rightful owners from their territories. Deprived of their home, the gods sought an ally capable of turning the tide of battle. Their choice fell on a mortal man. A delegation of celestial beings arrived at the palace of Ayodhya. The texts describe this visit in detail. The gods passed through the halls and appeared before the earthly king, requesting Puranjaya to lead their combined army. The very fact that the highest powers sought military aid from a human is a clear indication of the status of rulers of the Solar dynasty. The cosmic hierarchy is upended. Immortal beings seek protection from one whose life is limited by time. Puranjaya listens to their plea and agrees. However, he sets a condition. The king states that his war chariots and horses are suited for battles on solid ground, but are not adapted for fighting in the realms of the heavens. A special mount is required, an animal capable of moving between worlds. Puranjaya sets the terms. Indra himself, the lord of the heavens and king of the gods, must become his steed in the upcoming battle. This demand causes confusion among the celestial beings. A mortal ruler is dictating terms to the one who commands storms and rains. Such submission to a human is seen as a breach of hierarchy, yet the threat to the universe compels Indra to accept. Indra transforms into a giant bull. This creature has a broad back, powerful hooves, and a massive hump sturdy enough to bear the weight of a fully armoured warrior. Purandaja descends to the armoury, dons his armour, and takes up his bow and quiver filled with iron-tipped arrows. Emerging onto the square, the king mounts the bull's hump, known in Sanskrit as the Kakut. Once in position, the ruler commands, and the bull leaps from the earth to the celestial realms. The assault on the fortresses held by the Asuras begins. Purandaja crashes into the dense ranks of the enemy. Riding the king of gods, he unleashes a hail of arrows. The bowstring hums relentlessly. The Asuras attempt to counterattack with their own technologies, but cannot break the defense of the earthly warrior shielded by the Lord of the Heavens. In the heat of battle, Purandaja directs the bull toward the enemy commander's camp, draws his bow, and addresses them. "Withdraw or face the wrath of the one who rules the gods." Hearing this, the Asura army falters. Stripped of initiative and intimidated by the force of a warrior seated on Indra himself, they break formation. The Asuras abandon their weapons and hastily retreat to the lower realms. The celestial planets return to their rightful owners. The heavenly hierarchy is restored. After the battle, the gods hold a celebration. Purandaja declines offers to take a place among the celestial beings and returns to his duties in Ayodhya. For this military campaign, he receives a new name, Kakutsha, meaning he who sits on the hump. This name later becomes a hereditary title, and many kings of the Solar dynasty proudly bear the name Kakutsha as their lineage. This episode carries a profound philosophical meaning. On the surface, it recounts a grand military triumph, but ancient texts conceal strict conceptual models behind these images. In Indian tradition, the bull represents the material embodiment of law. Its 4 legs symbolize the 4 pillars of righteousness: asceticism, purity, compassion, and truthfulness. By assuming the form of the bull, Indra becomes the living embodiment of universal order. Kakutsha, sitting on the hump, demonstrates the ideal model of the interaction between power and morality. Earthly strength of the ruler relies on divine order to overcome chaos. The king cannot triumph over destructive forces, relying solely on his weapons or army. He needs a reliable foundation of supreme justice. At the same time, divine principles remain inactive without the guiding will of a human ready to take up the bow and assume responsibility for the battle's outcome. The symbiosis of the mortal warrior and the immortal law, creates the very force that maintains the balance of worlds. This balance between earthly power and heavenly laws continued to shape the fate of Kakucha's descendants. Several generations later, King Dilipa ascended the throne of Ayodhya. Classical literature describes his reign as a period of prosperity. Borders were well protected, the tax system functioned smoothly, and crime was nearly eliminated. However, behind the facade of political and economic stability lay the ruler's personal tragedy. Dilipa and his chief queen, Sudakshina, had no heir. For a king of the Solar dynasty, the absence of a successor meant more than just the end of a family line. It threatened the sacred duty to ancestors, who would lose regular offerings and risk their status in the subtle realms. Having exhausted medical remedies and performed numerous unsuccessful temple rituals, the king decided to entrust temporary governance to his ministers. He left Ayodhya and journeyed to the forest ashram of his family priest and spiritual guide, Vasishtha. The sage's abode was nestled in a dense forest, far from bustling cities and trade routes. Life there followed the strict rhythms of nature and Vedic rituals. Brahmins recited sacred hymns from dawn. Disciples gathered wood to sustain the sacrificial fire. Wild animals grew calm, peacefully coexisting with humans. Listening to the king, Vasishtha entered meditation. Using his inner vision, he analysed Dilipa's past and found the root of the problem. It lay in a long-ago misstep by the king himself. Returning to Earth after a visit to Indra, the king passed by the divine cow Sarabi, also known as Kamadhenu. This cow emerged during the churning of the cosmic ocean and had the power to grant any wish. Preoccupied with state affairs, Dilipa failed to notice her, neglected to show proper respect, and did not perform the customary circumambulation. This disregard violated etiquette. Sarabi placed a curse on the king. His lineage would end until he atoned to her or her offspring. At that time, Sarabi was in the lower realms, providing ghee for rituals of the god Varuna. Vasishtha offered an alternative path. He instructed Dilipa to serve Sarabi's daughter, a cow named Nandini, who lived near the ashram and belonged to the sage himself. Vasishtha outlined the rules of this atonement. When she walks, follow her. When she stops, stand still. When she lies down, sit beside her. Become her shadow. Dilipa accepted these conditions without objection. He removed his golden ornaments, set aside symbols of royal power, and dressed in simple bark cloth worn by forest hermits. The ruler, whose command extended over armies, voluntarily took up a long staff and became an ordinary herdsman. From that day, the king's routine changed. At dawn, he led Nandini to forest pastures. He watched her path, guiding her to fresh grass. He stayed close, warding off biting insects with a branch and seeking safe streams for water. Dilipa cleared the way of thorny bushes and protected Nandini from wild animals. He did not shelter himself from the midday sun or hide from heavy rain if the cow remained exposed. At night, when Nandini returned to the pen and fell asleep, the king lay nearby, keeping watch until morning. Queen Sudakshina also took part in this process. Each evening, she greeted Nandini with offerings, gave her water, and adorned her horns with garlands of forest flowers. This story reveals the concept of seva, selfless service. Ancient authors placed the empire's ruler in a position of complete submission to an animal. It signifies the renunciation of personal ego. The king forgets his social status, focusing his will and physical strength on meeting the basic needs of another being. Traditionally, in Indian culture, the cow is not merely a useful domestic animal, but a physical embodiment of the earth goddess, Bhumi. She provides milk, sustaining people, and asks only for respect and protection in return. Accordingly, Dilipa's service takes on a metaphorical meaning. By caring for Nandini, the king relearns how to care for his land and his people. Ancient texts convey the idea that a ruler cannot truly govern the land if he is disconnected from its roots. He must know how the grass grows, how rivers change course, and what specifically causes suffering to living beings in his domain. Through physical labor and daily hardships, Dileepa restores his lost connection with nature. He demonstrates to the world his ability to be a reliable guardian rather than merely a consumer of resources. Only a ruler who can attune to the rhythm of another and is willing to protect a vulnerable being earns the moral right to continue his lineage. Day after day, King Dileepa followed Nandini. Their paths led through dense Himalayan forests, where towering ancient cedars filtered the sunlight. Cold mountain streams nourished lush pastures. The ruler of Ayodhya, accustomed to city noise and palace rituals, completely adapted his life to the measured pace of the animal's existence. He learned to recognize forest sounds, detect nearby predators by the behavior of birds, and predict weather changes by the direction of the wind. Protecting the cow became his sole responsibility, replacing the governance of the state. One day, Nandini, drawn by fresh grass, wandered deep into a mountain gorge. Dileepa momentarily distracted himself by admiring the mountain landscape. Suddenly, a heavy roar shattered the silence. From thick bushes, a huge mountain lion sprang toward Nandini. The warrior's instincts kicked in immediately. Dileepa reached for his quiver to draw an iron-tipped arrow and string his bow, but his right arm suddenly went numb. An unknown force paralyzed the king's muscles, leaving him unable to move. A seasoned commander, used to leading armies and relying on his physical strength, found himself completely immobilized in the face of danger. He stood still, watching as the predator pinned the sacred animal entrusted to his care to the ground. At that moment, the lion turned its head and spoke to the king in clear human language. According to ancient legends, this predator was no ordinary forest beast. It introduced itself as Kumbhadara, a loyal servant of the god Shiva. The lion explained its position in detail. The Lord of the Mountains had ordered it to guard a young sacred cedar growing nearby from wild forest elephants that might damage its bark. As a reward for this service, Shiva allowed the lion to feed on any animal that wandered into the protected area. Accordingly, Nandini the cow became the lion's rightful prey, sent by higher powers. The predator advised the king to accept the loss, turn back, and return to the ashram, since earthly weapons were powerless against the will of the gods. Dileepa found himself in a hopeless position. His physical strength had left him. The lion's arguments rested on an unchangeable divine law. Lowering his bow, the king addressed the predator. "Take my body instead of hers. I will give my flesh to satisfy your hunger, but spare the sacred cow. My mentor entrusted her to me, and I cannot return to him empty-handed." The lion laughed in response. It tried to dissuade the ruler, appealing to the logic of statecraft. The predator reminded Dileepa of his youth, his vast kingdom, immense wealth and power over millions. Sacrificing all this for a single animal seemed absurd. The lion suggested the king offer his mentor 1,000,000 other fine cows in exchange for the lost one, thus preserving his life for the good of the state. However, Dileepa remained steadfast. He replied that the very word kshatriya means one who protects from harm. If he cannot safeguard a creature under his immediate care, then his life, power, and kingdom lose all meaning. A ruler has no right to shift responsibility onto circumstances or buy off his unfulfilled duty with wealth. The king finally laid down his weapons and voluntarily lay on the ground before the predator, awaiting the final blow. He prepared to leave this world. Several long moments passed, but the attack did not come. Instead of the lion's roar, Dileepa heard Nandini's calm voice. Opening his eyes, he saw the predator had vanished. The cow stood before him completely unharmed. She explained that the entire event had been an illusion she created to test his devotion. Nandini blessed the king, promising that his wish for an heir would be fulfilled. Soon after returning to the capital, Dileepa and his wife Sadakshina welcomed a son, whom they named Rakhu. This episode, vividly described in classical poetry, illustrates the highest expression of a ruler's qualities. A true monarch must protect his subjects, even at the cost of his own existence. Overcoming the ego is the key moment of this story. Dileepa renounces physical health and the instinct for self-preservation to save a single being. His decision to lay beneath the lion's paws proves that the sense of duty transcends biological fear. The ruler does not seek compromise through monetary compensation or replacing the lost animal. He understands that responsibility is not a commodity. The paralysis test carries special meaning here. The divine illusion deprives Dilipa of his primary tools of martial strength and agility. Left without the option to resolve the threat through force, the king employs the only weapon available to him, his willingness to sacrifice himself. It is this act of complete selflessness that ultimately breaks the curse hanging over his lineage and opens the way for new rulers of the Solar dynasty. The birth of his son was the direct outcome of this trial. Dilipa passed the throne to his heir, whose name soon outshone the glory of his predecessor. His reign was so significant that the entire Solar dynasty eventually came to be known by his name, the descendants of Raku. This name was later used in an epic poem describing the history and life of this royal family. Upon ascending the throne, Raku organized a military campaign of conquest in all directions. The army of Ayodhya marched across the Indian subcontinent. To the east, forces reached the shores of the Bay of Bengal. To the south, they subdued the wealthy spice kingdom of Panya. To the west, they encountered Persian tribes, and to the north, they reached the mountainous territories of the Huns and Cambodia. Raku imposed tribute on dozens of states, drawing countless riches to the capital. The treasury overflowed with gold bars, precious stones, and rare fabrics brought from all corners of the continent. After these successful campaigns, Raku began the ritual of Vishvajit. The rules required the king to distribute all his accumulated wealth down to the last coin. The purpose was a complete renunciation of the material fruits of conquest. Raku followed the command literally. He emptied the treasury, gave vast herds of cattle, fertile lands, and precious jewels to Brahmins, ascetics, and common people of his realm. The former ruler moved into a modest clay hut. Golden cups were replaced by simple earthenware, and fine silks gave way to coarse cloth, usually worn by hermits. At this time, a young Brahmin named Kauka arrived. The youth had completed many years of study at a remote forest ashram of the sage Vratantu. According to ancient tradition, a student must present a gift to the teacher upon finishing their education. Vratantu refused payment, saying the devoted service during the years of study was reward enough. However, Kauka insisted on settling the debt materially. Ancient texts mention that the teacher, angered by this persistence and the attempt to place a monetary value on knowledge, set an impossible price. He demanded 140 million gold coins, 10 million for each of the 14 disciplines studied. Kauka travelled to many neighbouring rulers, but none possessed such wealth. Learning of the generosity of the ruler of Ayodhya, the young man went to him. Upon entering the court, Kauka saw the king drinking water from an earthen jug. Realizing that the king had given away all his possessions and now lived in poverty, the Brahmin turned to leave, not wanting to burden him with requests. Raku stopped the visitor and politely inquired about the purpose of his visit. After hearing the detailed story of the debt owed to the teacher, the king said, "Wait for 2 or 3 days. No petitioner had ever left Raku's house empty-handed. I will obtain the gold needed," he declared. Though Raku had no money, he still possessed weapons and an unwavering resolve. He ordered a war chariot to be prepared and readied his heavy bow, determined to confront Kubera, the god of wealth and ruler of the northern city Alakapuri. The king reasoned plainly, if the earthly resources are completely exhausted, the duty of hospitality grants him the right to take treasure from the guardian of the heavenly treasury by force. When Kubera learned of the ruler's intentions, he chose not to wait for battle. He was well aware of the martial valor of the descendants of Ikshvaku. Late at night, dark clouds gathered over Ayodhya, and a heavy rain of pure gold poured down onto the courtyard of a clay hut. By morning, the city guards reported to the king about a pile of shining coins far exceeding the guest's request. Raku invited the young man and offered him the gold that had fallen from the sky. The Brahmin declined. "I need exactly 140 million coins to repay my debt to my teacher. I will not take a single coin more, for they do not belong to me," the youth replied. Raku insisted that he accept all the gold, arguing that it had been gathered especially for the guest. But the young man firmly refused to take more than necessary. The people of Ayodhya witnessed an unusual dispute. A powerful king trying to give away a vast fortune, and a humble student refusing to accept it. This story reveals the ancient concept of dana, or absolute generosity. In Vedic tradition, a ruler's wealth is measured not by the amount of gold accumulated, but by the ability to give resources to those in need. Raku was even prepared to enter armed conflict with divine forces to fulfill his duty to a single guest. The economic model of ancient times differs from modern principles of capital accumulation. Wealth was seen like water in nature. It had to be in constant flow. The king was like a rain cloud, collecting taxes and tribute from his lands only to pour them back down upon his people, maintaining the natural circulation of blessings. A stagnation of resources was considered a disruption of the cosmic order. By giving away every last coin, Raku did not lose his status. On the contrary, he secured his reputation as the ideal ruler, whose name would serve as a model for generations to come. Raku's grandson, King Dasharatha, inherited the throne of Ayodhya and continued his ancestors' traditions. He possessed many talents, but one skill distinguished him among all the warriors of his era. Dasharatha mastered the art of Shabda Vyetha, the ability to shoot arrows blindly, relying solely on sound. This required years of training under experienced mentors. The hunter had to completely shut off his sight and depend on hearing to judge the distance, size, and direction of a moving target by the slightest air vibration or the crack of a twig. Mastery of Shabda Vyetha was considered the highest level of martial skill, attainable by only a few. One night, Dasharatha went hunting near the banks of the Sarayu River. The forest had fallen silent. The birds had ceased their songs. The king took position in an ambush among thick bushes, waiting for large wild animals to come to drink. After some time, he heard a distinctive bubbling sound through the leaves. The water moved heavily, as if a large creature was slowly drawing it in with its trunk. Dasharatha assumed a wild elephant had approached the river. Without leaving his cover, he drew the taut string of his war bow, located the source of the sound, and without hesitation, released an arrow into the darkness. The heavy arrow found its mark, but instead of the roar of an animal, the night was broken by a human cry. Dasharatha dropped his bow, rushed out of the bushes, and hurried down to the water. On the damp sand lay a young man pierced by the king's arrow. Near him was a clay water pot. The sound of the river water filling the narrow neck of the vessel had been mistaken by the skilled hunter for the breath of an elephant. The youth's name was Sharavan Kumar. He belonged to a family of forest hermits who had dedicated themselves to strict asceticism. His parents were old and completely blind. Sharavan had devoted his life solely to serving them. He had fashioned a sturdy yoke with 2 woven baskets, which he carried on his shoulders to transport his father and mother during a long pilgrimage to the sacred sites of India. That night, the elders felt a strong thirst, and Sharavan went to the Sarayu River to fetch water, leaving them to rest beneath a tree. Bleeding, Sharavan Kumar looked up at the king of Ayodhya, who stood over him. The youth did not plead for his life, nor did he beg for mercy or demand vengeance. His only concern was the unfulfilled duty to his family. "O king," Sharavan said, "my life is fading, but not far from here, in the forest, my blind parents sit waiting for me, suffering from thirst. Take this pot, bring them water, and tell them what has happened. Do not keep them waiting." With these words, Sharavan Kumar passed from this world. Dasharatha lifted the pot. His hands, accustomed to wielding heavy weapons and ruling a vast kingdom, trembled. The king made his way deeper into the forest, following the youth's directions. Soon he found the 2 elders. Hearing footsteps, the blind father called out, "Son, why have you been so long? We are parched with thirst. Give us water." Dasharatha stopped. He faced the most difficult act of his life, confessing the unintended taking of an innocent life. He set the pot down, gave his name, and recounted in detail his fatal mistake by the river Sarayu. The elders fell silent. Losing their only support meant they would soon depart from life in the wild forest. They asked the king to take them to their son's body. At the riverbank, the parents performed the necessary farewell rites, using water from the river. Then the blind father turned toward Dasharatha. "You have taken our sight a second time," the elder said calmly. You have taken away our eyes and our only support. I do not curse you in anger. I only speak the unyielding law of the cosmos. Every action has its consequence. The time will come when you too will leave this world, crushed by unbearable grief in separation from your beloved son. Examining ancient texts, one can see how the epic carefully constructs a concept of cause and effect. Dasharatha's mistake becomes the key turning point that sets the great story of the Ramayana in motion. The blind man's words are not a magical curse of a wronged person, but the physics of karma at work. Cause creates effect. Dasharatha deprived the parents of their child, and the balance of the universe demands a reciprocal response to restore harmony. This law applies to all without exception. The status of a ruler, his treasury, a powerful army, and belonging to the great solar dynasty Surya Vansha. None of these grant immunity from the consequences of one's actions. Even a king with absolute power over his subjects cannot override the workings of the universal order. Unintentional acts do not absolve responsibility. Dasharatha did not intend harm to the youth. He erred in identifying his target. But in the worldview of ancient India, the outcome of an action is always more important than the original intention. This episode offers a crucial key to understanding the future events of the dynasty. Decades later, the prophecy spoken by the riverbank will come true with precision. Dasharatha will be forced to send his eldest son, Rama, into a long exile, and it will be the pain of separation from him that will ultimately stop the heart of the mighty king. The circle will close, and the scales of the cosmos will come into balance. We have journeyed far, from the first rays of creation to the complex moral dilemmas faced by ancient rulers. According to Hindu cosmology, the main events of this dynasty unfolded during the Treta Yuga, a time when spiritual principles had begun to wane, but rulers still upheld the world's balance through their righteousness. The Solar Dynasty, or Surya Vansha, left behind more than just a list of names in ancient texts. It embodied a profound legacy of duty, sacrifice, and cosmic order. This line of kings shaped the image of a statesman whose life was devoted solely to service, not to the enjoyment of power. Each key figure in our story laid a stone in the foundation of this ideal. Manu carried the seeds of plants through the waters of a global catastrophe and preserved the sacred Vedic texts for future generations. His eldest son, Ikshvaku, led humanity from a nomadic gathering lifestyle to settled life. He founded Ayodhya with broad avenues, deep moats, and a strict grid of neighborhoods, and established the first taxation system. According to the texts, the king collected 1/6 of his subjects' income, but in return, he assumed karmic responsibility for their safety. Harishchandra demonstrated the power of truth through his own example. He exchanged the royal palace for hard labor in the city of Kashi, enduring daily hardships to uphold his promise. The mighty Kakutsa defended the gods themselves, setting terms for the ruler of the heavens and defeating the armies of the Asuras. Dilipa renounced his warrior status, removed his royal armor, and offered his body to a Himalayan predator to save a sacred animal. Araka showed the nature of generosity. By performing a complex ritual called Vishwajit, he emptied the royal treasury down to the last coin, keeping only a clay vessel to honor the duty of hospitality. All these qualities, accumulated over dozens of generations, ultimately united in the son of King Dasharatha, Prince Rama. Indian tradition still regards the period of his reign, known as Ram Rajya, as an unsurpassed ideal of just governance. The texts say that during those times, diseases disappeared, hunger was unknown, droughts ceased, and every inhabitant of the vast kingdom knew their place and faithfully fulfilled their prescribed social duties. Though not officially confirmed, many modern scholars of ancient Indian texts believe that the concept of Ram Rajya is based on a real period of economic and social flourishing in the Ganges Valley. Popular memory carefully preserved the recollections of this era, transforming them into myth. The history of the Solar Dynasty offers a detailed illustration of how the ancient laws of karma worked. These cosmic rules are unyielding but just. No deed goes without consequence. A mistake during a night hunt cost Dasharatha his son, while pride condemned King Trishanku to hang upside down eternally in the southern hemisphere of the night sky. The epic authors conveyed a message through these stories. Duty to society, ancestors, and the gods, often demands complete renunciation of personal comfort. A ruler does not belong to himself. His body, time, and wealth are merely tools to maintain order in the realm. The desire to cling to power or preserve the physical body at any cost always leads to downfall. True immortality is achieved differently. It lies not in attempts to break into heavenly realms in a human form, defying the laws of nature. Genuine eternity resides in the memory of descendants about noble deeds. When a person acts no longer for personal gain, they become part of an eternal historical process. The Bhagavad Gita contains lines that perfectly summarize the philosophy of the Solar Dynasty kings. Just as the ignorant act out of attachment to the fruits of their labor, the wise must act without attachment for the good of the entire world. These words are spoken by Lord Krishna to the warrior Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra before the great fratricidal war. Yet they fully reflect the path of every ruler from the solar lineage. To renounce the fruits of one's actions means to fulfill duty without the slightest expectation of reward, praise, or gratitude. This is how Dilipa acted, patiently following the cow through the dense forest. This is how Harishchandra acted, demanding a copper coin for the cremation of his own child. Ancient Indian epics offer us a completely different perspective on the nature of leadership. Power here is not measured by the amount of conquered land or accumulated gold. It is measured by the ruler's willingness to sacrifice himself for those who are weaker. The kings of the Solar Dynasty made mistakes, suffered, lost loved ones, and endured long exiles. But each time, when faced with a choice between personal well-being and the universal law of Dharma, they chose the law. Our journey through the pages of ancient texts has come to an end. We have traced a continuous historical line from the god Surya to great earthly rulers whose names have survived millennia, preserved on palm leaves, in the oral traditions of priests, and carved into the stones of ancient temples. Thank you for your attention to detail and deep interest in the complex history of the East. Your presence beyond the screen truly gives meaning to this work. Until next time, dear friends, we will meet again in future lectures. You've been watching Ancient Secrets. Thanks for watching and have a great day.